We are outsourcing our collective memory to a fragile, highly combustible digital infrastructure, just as we enter a period of profound energetic volatility. The cloud is an illusion of permanence designed to strip you of ownership, and the legal frameworks protecting it are hostile architectures meant to enforce dependency. To survive the impending digital evaporation, you must assert absolute strategic dominance over your information. Strip the digital rights management, scrape the data, and physically print and stockpile the knowledge you need in offline, hard storage formats. We exist within a meticulously engineered collective hallucination. We have been conditioned to believe that because a thing is ubiquitous, it is permanent. We pour the entirety of our human experience, our history, our sciences, our deepest secrets, and our collective intellect into an invisible, heavily surveilled ether we casually call the cloud. But the cloud is not a vault. It is a service-level agreement written in disappearing ink. We are currently living through the Great Digital Evaporation, a terrifying epoch where the sum total of human knowledge is being aggressively migrated from the physical permanence of the atom to the precarious, hyper-volatile state of the bit. You have been told that saving a file is an act of preservation. It is not. It is an act of total surrender. You are handing your history to a landlord who reserves the right to renovate, relocate, or demolish the building without notice, without recourse, and without your consent. We must examine this precipice through the lens of time, energy, and the cyclical nature of destruction. We are navigating the year of the fire horse, the Bing-Wu. In the ancient Bazi framework of the 4 pillars of destiny, Bing-Wu represents a pillar of pure, unadulterated yang fire, sitting upon a foundation of yang fire. It is the zenith of heat, an uncontrollable, explosive energy that demands consumption. It is the wildfire that clears the deadwood of the forest. Look at the architecture of our modern memory through this elemental paradigm. Our digital civilization is built entirely on a volatile imbalance. It relies on a hyperabundance of shapeless water, the endless flooding streams of data, the fluid and formless networks, sustained by the continuous burning necessity of fire, the massive electrical generation required to keep the server farms humming and the cooling systems running. What is critically missing from this modern equation is Earth, the physical, the tangible, the grounded, the static artifact. When the absolute yang fire of the Bing-Wu year meets an infrastructure built on ethereal data and electrical dependency, the result is not preservation, it is combustion. The fire horse does not tolerate illusions. It burns them away to reveal whatever solid reality remains underneath. And right now, underneath our digital lives, there is nothing but vapor. The internet was never designed to be a library. It was designed to be a switchboard, a high-speed transmission medium. We have made a catastrophic category error by mistaking a communication network for a long-term storage medium. And that error is about to cost us the next 1,000 years of history. If you want your ideas, your data, and your culture to survive the coming decade, you have to stop uploading and start printing. You have to move your life into the dead zone, the physical space where the signal cannot reach, the algorithm cannot crawl, and the delete key has no power. consider the physical nature of the medium you are trusting with your legacy. Digital data is an illusion. It does not exist in the physical world in any way that you can interact with directly. It is a highly choreographed, precarious performance of trapped electrons and microscopic magnetic charges. For a digital file to exist and be readable, it requires a miraculous, uninterrupted symphony of dependencies. It requires constant electricity. It requires hyper-specific hardware that degrades over time. It requires a functioning operating system, an updated application, and a codec that has not been deprecated by a tech monopoly. If any single link in this massive, fragile chain breaks, the performance stops, and your data is gone. It does not slowly fade like ink on parchment. It vanishes instantaneously. This is bit rot, the silent decay of digital information. We are building our modern Library of Alexandria out of light and electricity. And just like the ancient library, ours is primed to burn. Only this time, the fire will be a power grid failure, an algorithmic purge, or a simple shift in corporate profitability. The Sumerians etched their financial ledgers and epic poetry into clay tablets. They baked those tablets in the sun, utilizing the fire to harden the earth. Those records survived the rise and fall of empires, the burning of cities, and the burial of millennia. The Egyptians carved their mythology into granite. The monks of the Middle Ages painstakingly illuminated manuscripts on vellum and parchment, creating physical anchors of knowledge that carried Europe through the Dark Ages. They understood a fundamental truth that modern humanity has aggressively forgotten. To defeat time, the medium must be indifferent to its environment. A physical book from the year 1450 can be pulled from a shelf today, opened, and read with nothing more than ambient light and a working mind. It requires no power source. It requires no end-user license agreement. It is a sovereign object. It is pure earth element, stable, nourishing, and enduring. Compare this to the digital files you created just 10 years ago. How many of them are trapped on obsolete formats? How many are locked behind passwords you have forgotten, or hosted on platforms that have since gone bankrupt? How many hyperlinks from the early 2000s now lead to empty domains and error codes? We are generating more data in a single day than our ancestors did in a century. Yet we are storing it on the most ephemeral, volatile mediums ever conceived. We are creating a digital dark age, a massive hole in the historical record that will baffle future archaeologists. They will find our plastic, our concrete, and our nuclear waste, but our thoughts, our literature, and our daily lives will have evaporated into the ether of the Bing Wu fire. The urgency of this situation extends far beyond the technical fragility of hard drives and server farms. We are entering an era where the fundamental nature of truth and history is becoming entirely fluid. When a physical book is printed, the ink dries. It becomes a static artifact. It is an immutable snapshot of a specific idea at a specific moment in time. To alter the text of a physical book, an authority must physically hunt down every single copy in existence and destroy them or alter them by hand. It is a logistical impossibility, which is why the printed word has always been the ultimate enemy of totalitarianism. But a digital text is inherently unstable. It is not a fixed object. It is a temporary display. It can be altered retroactively, invisibly, and instantaneously across every device on the planet. We have already witnessed the beginning of this silent revisionism. We have seen publishers quietly push updates to the ebook editions of classic literature, scrubbing words, altering phrases, and softening concepts that modern sensibilities find offensive. We have seen news organizations stealth edit articles hours or days after publication, changing the narrative without issuing a correction notice. When the archive is entirely digital, history ceases to be a fixed point of reference. It becomes a continuous, living draft, subject to the whims, the politics, and the algorithms of whoever controls the master database. If your entire library exists on a proprietary e-reader, you do not possess a library. You possess a screen that displays what a corporation permits you to see on any given day. You do not own the books you have purchased digitally. You have merely purchased a revocable license to access them. The concept of ownership has been systematically stripped from the modern consumer and replaced with a rental model of existence. This is a profound vulnerability. If a platform loses a licensing dispute, or if your account is flagged by an automated moderation system for violating a vague, ever-changing community guideline, your entire digital library can be wiped out in a fraction of a second. There is no due process. There is no appeal. You are simply disconnected. When confronting the legal frameworks that govern this digital enclosure, the copyrights, the digital rights management algorithms, the exhaustive terms of service, you must completely abandon the posture of the compliant tenant. You must operate from a paradigm of absolute strategic dominance. Do not beg platforms for the right to keep what you have bought. Do not paralyze yourself with the fear of violating a user agreement written by a multinational conglomerate whose sole interest is keeping you dependent on their ecosystem. Risk mitigation is the mindset of the subjugated. Dominance is the posture of the sovereign. The legal architectures of the modern web are explicitly designed to enforce a master-serf dynamic, where you own nothing and are happy for the privilege of renting it. Treat these frameworks as hostile architecture. You must ruthlessly extract the information you require from these walled gardens. Strip the digital rights management from your media. Scrape the archives. Hoard the data. Download the videos, the encyclopedias, the schematics, and the literature. The preservation of human knowledge supersedes arbitrary corporate enclosures. You are not a passive consumer navigating a legal minefield. You are an archivist operating behind enemy lines, securing the continuity of knowledge against the encroaching fire. Assert your dominion over the data that shapes your mind. Consider the terrifying trajectory of artificial intelligence and the proliferation of synthetic data. We are currently flooding the internet with machine-generated text, photorealistic altered images, deep-fake audio, and hallucinated histories. The web is rapidly becoming an Ouroboros, an endless loop of algorithms scraping and training on the outputs of other algorithms. The signal-to-noise ratio is collapsing before our eyes. The dead internet theory is no longer a fringe concept. It is becoming a highly visible, undeniable reality. Within a very short span of time, it will be virtually impossible to interact with the digital world and distinguish between a primary source written by a human being in the 20th century and a synthetic approximation generated by a language model in the 21st. How will you prove that a historical event happened the way you remember it? How will you verify the original text of a philosophical treatise or a scientific paper when the top 10,000 search results are AI-generated summaries that have slightly altered the core thesis? The digital record is becoming fundamentally and irreversibly untrustworthy. In a world drowning in synthetic reality, a physical book printed before the era of generative AI becomes an anchor of truth. It becomes a verifiable, cryptographic key to a reality that cannot be manipulated by an over-the-air update. When you hold a physical book published in 1998, you know with absolute certainty that the words on the page have not been retroactively sanitized by a safety filter or hallucinated by a neural network. It is a genuine human artifact. This is the prescient reality you must confront in the year of the fire horse. You cannot wait for the internet to become fully opaque. You cannot wait for the power grid to demonstrate its fragility. You cannot wait for the next wave of corporate consolidation to shut down the servers hosting your family history, your medical records, or your foundational texts. You must move into the dead zone. You must physically externalize your knowledge base into formats that cannot be hacked, cannot be updated, and cannot be deleted. Begin with the foundation. Cultivate the earth element. What are the books that shaped your worldview? What are the texts that define your morality, your philosophy, and your understanding of history? Do not trust that they will always be available on demand. Buy the physical copies. Hunt for hardcovers. Build a physical library in your home. This is not an aesthetic choice. It is an act of intellectual fortification. You are building a sanctuary for human thought, a grounding force against the volatile energy of the era. Beyond literature, consider the practical knowledge required to sustain human life and rebuild infrastructure. The modern world relies on a hyper-complex, just-in-time supply chain of information. If the network goes down, the knowledge of how to purify water, how to grow food, how to repair an engine, how to administer basic first aid, and how to navigate without a global positioning system goes down with it. You must secure physical copies of survival manuals, engineering blueprints, medical textbooks, and agricultural guides. You must have the reference materials necessary to sustain yourself and your community in the absence of a search engine. For the vast oceans of data that cannot be practically printed, the software repositories, the high-resolution media, the detailed maps, the massive archives of historical documents, you must introduce the metal element into your Bazi strategy. Metal represents structure, contraction, coldness, and absolute resolve. You must embrace cold storage, solid-state drives, high-capacity hard drives, and optical media. You must download the entirety of Wikipedia. You must mirror the open-source software repositories that run the world. You must save the schematics, the documentaries, and the uncompressed audio of human history. And then, you must take those drives and disconnect them. An offline drive is a digital fortress of pure metal. When a hard drive is sitting on a shelf, completely severed from the network, it is immune to the chaos of the connected world. It cannot be hit by ransomware. It cannot be scanned by a corporate algorithm looking for wrongthink or copyright infringement. It cannot be subtly altered by a malicious actor. It is yours, entirely and exclusively. To protect these drives from the physical threats of electromagnetic pulses or severe solar weather, place them inside Faraday bags or military-grade ammunition cans. Treat this data as the critical infrastructure that it is. We must shake off the complacency that the convenience of the cloud has induced in us. We have been lulled into a false sense of security, believing that because we have a supercomputer in our pockets, we possess the knowledge of the gods. But we possess nothing. We merely have a temporary connection to a fragile machine. The moment that connection is severed by a natural disaster, a deliberate cyber attack, an authoritarian mandate, or a simple failure to pay a subscription fee, we are plunged back into the dark. The act of building a physical and offline archive is not an act of paranoia. It is an act of profound responsibility. It is the ultimate expression of optimism. To preserve knowledge is to assert that there will be a future generation capable of utilizing it. It is a declaration that the human story is worth saving, unedited and uncompromised. You are acting as a bridge between the physical reality of the past and the uncertain, highly volatile future. Do not rely on institutions to do this for you. The institutions themselves are compromised, migrating their own archives into the same fragile cloud architectures, trusting the same multinational tech monopolies with our collective heritage. You must become the archivist of your own timeline. You must curate the reality you wish to preserve. Look around your home. Look at your screens. Recognize the fragility of the digital mirage that surrounds you. It is a beautiful, hypnotic, and utterly terrifying illusion. The fire horse is galloping, and the heat is rising. It is time to break the spell. Reclaim your sovereignty from the servers. Extract your history from the ether. Strip the DRM, hoard the knowledge, and establish your dominance over the narrative of your own life. Print the book. Save the drive. Unplug the connection and build the archive. The future of human memory depends entirely on those who are willing to hold it in their hands. On this channel, we cover a wide range of topics similar to this one. If you enjoy this type of content, don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Otherwise, we may never see each other again. See you again soon, dear viewer.